want to be forever young. Do you really want to live forever?
One life,
forever
one love,
and ever.
one soul.
Today's December 9th, 2019. I'm Brent Nally, and I'm here with a very fascinating human, Steve Ludwin. Steve, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Brent. Really nice to meet you, and thank you so much for having me on your channel.
Definitely. And Steve was very gracious to do this interview with me. Steve is American, as you can probably tell from his accent, but he moved to London in 1987 and has lived there ever since. That's where we're recording from now. Apologize if there's any latency here, like delay in the video conference, but I really wanted to do this interview because he's so fascinating. So Steve, anything you want to start to share and introduce yourself?
Okay, well, like you said, my name is Steve Ludwin, and I defected from the United States in 1987 to come live in London, England, to seek out a career in music. And it was probably the best move of my life. I think London was really the center of music from then until, about 2005. But so that's really my background. So a lot of people, I worked in music. I don't have a medical background. I didn't, not a doctor or anything. But obviously, my hobby has been working with venomous snakes and getting into self-immunization. So I don't know, where would you like to start? Or perhaps you can ask me the first question.
Definitely. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I hope the audience can bear with us again with a little bit of the latency that we might have, the delay in any voices or video there. But first of all, I'd like to know, are you still working in the music industry? Obviously, you're going to be a musician for life because it's your passion, but is that what you're still doing, to make money?
Yes, I am. I just signed, and I'm lucky enough to sign another publishing deal last year. The plan is, to write songs for other artists now, but, not so sure how it's going. I've been asked to write in a trap style, emo trap and stuff, and it hasn't really happened for me yet. But yeah, I'm still working in music, but I'm really looking to retire from that and follow my passion, which is just studying snake venom and potential medicinal properties of snake venom.
Awesome. So that's what we're going to be talking about now, and the potential powerful anti-aging effects of snake venom as well too. So Steve, I believe you're 53 years old right now. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, I'm 53. I was born in 1966.
Yeah, and in my personal opinion, you do not look 53. You look much younger, again, in my opinion. Since I'm trying to promote science of anti-aging, do you mind sharing, can you be honest, and you don't have to if you don't want to, but do you dye your hair at all, or were you looking at pretty much a natural?
Yeah, I'm starting to get sort of gray hairs, and I've used henna in the past just to tame down, but I am starting to get gray on the sides and, a bit in my beard and stuff. So, but, I feel good for 53, and I get that comment a lot. I've had that, certainly for the last 10 years, people kind of going, what? You can't be your age. I don't know if it's, what it is. I can't, it's just that's the comments I'm always getting. So.
Well, I think aging sucks. I think that chronological aging is awesome because you get wiser, you get more experience, right? But biological aging sucks. It destroys. I'm balding. I'm only 34. I started balding in my early 20s, and I was like, "What the hell's going on?" I was probably drinking too much. I was in a fraternity and not living healthiest. I think that probably contributed. Plus, it's just very genetic. My dad and grandfather on my dad's side were both bald, very, very young in their 20s and things like that. Not completely, but started balding. So I think personally, if you're just starting to get a few gray hairs on your side, 53 on the side, pretty 99.9 percentile in my opinion. So. So I want to do a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, look, I didn't get into.
Go ahead, Steve.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? You dropped out for a second.
Oh no, just you continue. I think you were saying I didn't get into, and I think you're going to say snake venom
Yeah,
injections.
yeah, perhaps I should go back to the start a little bit. So, yeah, I was born with a complete passion for reptiles and amphibians. Like, I loved snakes when I was younger, and I don't know where it came from because my parents, were kind of devoid of that. I was drawing snakes and talking about snakes at 3.5 years old, apparently, and just always catching them. I grew up in Connecticut. And I think when I was like around 10, 11 years old, I went down to the Miami Serpentarium with my father, who was a Pan Am pilot. So I flew for free everywhere, which helped me sort of, find snakes in the tropics. But I went to the Miami Serpentarium and I met this herpetologist called Bill Haast, who you might have heard about. And he is I think he's one of the first Westerners to start injecting himself with snake venom. He started in 1948. And I met him when I was younger. I saw him milking cobras, and it was just kind of known back then. Obviously, there was no internet or there were no books on the subject, but it was kind of known as like that man had been injecting himself with snake venom, and it was kind of known that his blood had been used to help snake bite victims. And it really just stuck with me. I remember thinking, that's incredible. Okay, so fast forward, I think when I was like 17, 18 years old, and I was in Connecticut, and I just had this light bulb moment go off. I mean, it was really strange, to be honest with you. I felt like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind or something. It was just like, this means something. But I had this feeling of like, you're going to do this with snake venom. I almost was, given the snakes I was going to use, and it was just like something really good is going to come out of it in the future. Bang, and that's all it was. It was just pretty much that. So that was really an important moment in my life. I was like, okay, that's weird. I moved to London, and one of my first jobs was working in a place that was like importing cobras and scorpions and all this stuff for universities, zoos, and pharmaceuticals, etc. So I suddenly, I was like a kid in a candy store. I suddenly had access to, venomous snakes. And I started taking them home. My boss was super cool. And it was in about, I think it was like 1988, I started for the first time. And I just have to tell you and your viewers, like, I'm kind of like the Beavis and Butthead of science, in the sense that I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even necessarily know the difference in the venoms between the neurotoxins and the hemotoxins. And I had not even milked a snake before. I just had to kind of figure it out. You'd seen it on TV, on nature documentaries, and I did it. I managed to, successfully milk the snakes, and then I tried it for the first time, which was, people always ask me, what was that like? Was it scary? And yes, I remember it being scary, but I also remember having this like incredible confidence, and it felt like instinct. It was instinctual to get that venom into me. And the more I've learned about it now, it's like there are indigenous people, around the planet that have done that. They've been using snake venom similar to how I was doing it. And it really made me wonder, am I just like this weird, Caucasian kid who grew up in Connecticut that just had this put into me, like this instinctual sort of feeling like I've got to get that highly evolved reptilian saliva into me. So it's kind of weird. I mean,
Steve, so many fascinating things come to my mind when you tell that story, and thanks so much for sharing. One thing that I'll share kind of towards the end there, with the fact that indigenous cultures have been injecting snake venom for, it looks like maybe thousands of years. I know traditional Chinese medicine, it's a big part of their medicine now and has been for a long time. And one thing that Ray Dalio says, Ray Dalio is the founder of Bridgewater Capital. It's the largest hedge fund on the planet, and he's worth like $18 billion or something right now, all from scratch. He came from a middle-class family in Brooklyn. And his book is right over here. It's a fantastic book called Principles. You can see it right. Oh, it's weird. You can see it right there. And
Okay.
he talks about that history just repeats itself over and over and over again. And even with technology and the crazy world we're living in now, history does just repeat itself. You just have to be able to find that history well enough. And that's why Bridgewater Capital was able to navigate the 2008 financial crisis, the global financial crisis. He and his team predicted that, and they actually made a profit while most hedge funds and financial institutions were failing. And so the reason I bring that up is, who knows, like biology is crazy, human experience is crazy. Maybe there's some kind of thing in your DNA from your ancestors that was just telling you to do this. And we'll get into some more details about this from a scientific standpoint. There is a very good reason to do this, it looks like, from an anti-aging standpoint. And then also from indigenous cultures, they might have wanted to be injecting snake vitamin, microdosing and scaling up, as you've done, to prevent themselves in the jungle from death if they got bit by a snake.
Yes, and perhaps other things. So basically when I started, and I was doing it in a very, I was doing it in a manner that they would have been doing. Obviously they didn't have syringes. So all you need to do is basically make a small incision. I would take like a scalpel and just, kind of cat scratch my arm the first couple times. And I would just drop the raw venom into that. And you can immediately feel it burning. And I mean, snake venom doesn't have to go very deep into you either. It can travel in the lymph, which is just underneath, the blood. So it's, if you have a scratch, it can get into you. So it felt very, I don't want to use the word shamanic, but like that's how they would have been doing it. And the first time I did it, I felt that burn and I quickly washed it off and observed it. I could see that it was bleeding. I could see that it was beginning to raise. And it was kind of scary in that sense. Like, I didn't know if it was going to kill me or not. I definitely knocked on a strange door. I was like, I'm playing with death here, I think. But again, I had this confidence. So, but what happened is, like the next day, there was like intense like discoloration, bruising, like weird colored bruising and stuff. And that kind of stayed for a good, 10 days to 2 weeks. I didn't go back. I didn't do it again for about another 4 months. In those early days, I started off quite slowly, but after about 4 or 5 years, I definitely, and the reason I did it, was to really I wanted to prove to myself whether or not it was possible to, build up an immunity to snake venom. And I think it was, a good 4 to 5 years later, I started noticing that, hey, I'm using more venom and the recuperation time, recovering was happening so much quicker. Like the swelling would go down much quicker. You wouldn't have the bruising. And I really started thinking, okay, I've proven to myself in this weird science experiment that I was doing that it was working. And I think maybe 10 years into it, I started really, really getting into it and upping my game, and then noticing like, more incredible stuff. But like I said, I wasn't doing it for the anti-aging properties. I wasn't aware of that. Like I said, the internet wasn't around, no books on the subject. I was just seeing whether or not it was possible to become immune to the snake venom. I think as recently, certainly in the last 10 years, I've been learning more about it and kind of discovering that there are potential anti-aging properties to it. And it's not just snake venom. There's other venoms. And I mean, are you aware of the term? Is it hormesis?
Yeah,
Hormesis?
it's hormesis, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of was learning a little bit about that how, small amounts of toxins can be beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, that's just basically what this is in a nutshell, I would say. And it's not just toxins when I think of the word hormesis, and I'm just sharing my definition. Don't go crazy in the comments, people. I take cold showers a lot in the morning, and I do that because I wake up and I do something difficult. Cold showers are not fun for me. I don't enjoy them, but there are health benefits. If you put it more on your neck and your forehead for a little bit, and it's also psychological benefit. You just wake up and do something tough, do something difficult, and then it makes other things seem easy. And I would imagine there's got to be some aspect of that for you as well too, after maybe in the beginning when it was more painful and stressful and it was new and there were no books, there was no internet, there had to be so many things going on in your head. And like you said, you just had to trust your instinct. But whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, as long as you stay positive and try and learn from experiences and grow. And it seems like that's what you've done in this case, right?
Yes, I think so. And as the years progressed, and I was a touring, in a rock band, we were signed to Island Records, and just like I started, people are always getting ill on tour and stuff with throat infections, and I was the vocalist, so I started gargling with, I was using rattlesnake venom. And again, the first time I tried that after, coming home from a tour and everyone's getting sick and I gargle with that, I just feel the venom getting into the broken vocal cords, and you could really feel it like just singe it, like burn it. And you would be right as rain the next morning, And I've since heard from some doctors over here that, there's some top Jordanian generals that have been doing that for the last 100 years. They gargle with snake venom once a week, to keep their good health. And I know they do that in China as well. So, I mean, snake venom is being used. And it's just I think Western medicine just doesn't kind of know about it, or it's just a thing of the past. It used to be like snake cults, well over 2,000 years ago, were using snake venom medicinally. The Egyptians were doing it. Everyone's at it. And that knowledge kind of got buried by the advent of, the three big organized religions, who, again, the snake was really demonized, obviously, in those religions as being, the devil. And it made me sort of go, oh, why are they doing that to the snake? And why has all that knowledge been, taken away?
Very interesting stuff. If we want to all put on our conspiracy hats and think about that, I mean, it's very possible. I try to focus on truth and reality, and anytime I think that elites have valuable information, it's in their interest to, in most cases, try, or at least it's not that hard to imagine that they would want to keep that information secret, so it'd give them a competitive advantage. So, it's the caduceus, right? The symbol of the health symbol with the snake. I've always wondered, why a snake? That's always interesting to me. But
yeah, I mean,
go ahead, please, Steve.
Yes, the symbol of medicine. Every ambulance that goes by you look at it, there's two snakes, and it's not just that. I mean, you look at yin and yang, that Asian sort of yin and yang, that's two snakes, swallowing each other's tails. There's something called Ouroboros as well. You have so many snakes that are like anthropologists, are discovering. Obviously the Egyptians were just, dripping in snakes. Indians dripping in snakes. If you were anthropologists, you ask an Aborigine from Australia what they believe, and they believe there's a giant snake that goes around the earth. And if you go and ask indigenous people in the Amazon and South America what they believe, and they believe there's a giant snake that goes around the earth. Again, it's like, wow, what are the coincidences of that? I mean, that's fact. That's their beliefs, and just, they found cave drawings in Siberia of snakes, okay, where there are no snakes. So like, I think there's a history of mankind and snakes that is really, kind of been buried, and it's interesting.
One of my other personal passions is lost civilizations and lost history as well too. I watch Ancient Aliens. I find it fascinating. A lot of people might make fun of me for that, but a lot of people who make fun of you for something, a lot of times they do it out of ignorance, right? Most people haven't seen the show, and I hadn't seen it till 2016 when the first ever Alien Con was coming to Santa Clara, California, Silicon Valley area. And my friends in May of 2016 emailed me and they were like, "Hey, we got to go to this. It's awesome." I'm like, "What is it?" And they're like, "Well, it's the first ever Alien Con based off the show Ancient Aliens." And I'm like, "You mean that show with the guy with the hair, with the memes on Facebook and stuff?" And they're like, "Yeah." So they convinced me to go and buy a ticket. And I was like, well, if I'm going to go, I might as well start watching the show. And I'm a practical guy. So I started on season 1, episode 1. I got hooked because like the format of that show, if nobody's ever seen it, it's 1 hour long, but it's got commercials. So it's essentially a 45-minute show. In the first 15 minutes, they're trying to explain something that science cannot explain with their theories using ancient aliens. And there's some very interesting ideas in there that I think hold a lot of water. And then there's just some crazy stuff in there too. So I won't rant any more about that. But my point is that I study a lot of history. I study a lot of ancient civilization type things. And there are a lot of fascinating things. And I think that we have a lot of lost knowledge. I'll say one final thing, Steve, on that. This is well known. The Library of Alexandria, the library in Egypt, about 5,000 years ago, was said to have held all of the world's knowledge, all the world's books, and it was completely destroyed. So I don't think that there's a human being alive on the planet unless you want to believe in secret elites, stuff, which is possible, but there's no mainstream people who know, what was in those books, and we could have lost tons of knowledge there.
Yeah, I hope it can be recovered someday, somehow.
I don't think so, unless
snakes are just really.
Please go ahead, Steve.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So obviously, snakes have been like really important with time. So yes, I also think. Okay, so I wasn't using snake venom for anti-aging back then, but I really started to notice that I was not getting ill anymore. I'm coming up now on 17 years without having like a flu or even a cold, okay? Which to me is surely impossible. Like, how is that possible? And it's always I've always felt that what I've been doing by putting this, these venoms into my body, and I was doing it a lot. I really upped my game. And I really believe that by doing that, my white blood cells are charging that area. Every time you're doing that, they're just charging it and, fighting it. We have humans, as you know, we have an adaptive immune system. So toxins that go in you, the second time it happens, your body kind of remembers it and kind of can defeat that and kind of, it acknowledges that it's been there before. So that's what I've been doing. It's just constantly putting that into my body. But I really think that the white blood cells are attacking it and attacking it. And I feel like I'm exercising my immune system. While everybody else is out there lifting weights and stuff like that to get physical strength, I felt that I was lifting weights with my immune system. And perhaps that is the reason why I appear to have a very strong immune system against just, common illnesses.
Definitely. And let's talk about
And I feel it's quite lonely from what I've seen.
Oh, Steve, sorry, please continue. We had a little bit of that latency there.
Sorry, I've lost you for a second.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say there, Steve, is when you were 46 years old, I believe you had your telomeres tested and they showed a biological age of 28, right? Oh, Steve.
I was doing a documentary for Animal. Yeah, I was 42 years old. I was doing a documentary for Animal Planet States and Channel 5 over here. And, there were a lot of skeptics. I was getting taken to doctors and, everyone was trying to basically, call me. But yeah, I had them tested, the telomeres tested. I was 42 years old. I remember kind of freaking the doctor out on Harley Street because he's like, "Oh, you're scoring like a 28-year-old. You're scoring. There's no damage to the tail ends of the telomeres yet." So that felt good. That was interesting. I'd love to go through that, have that tested again now that I'm 53.
Okay.
But
I have so I've interviewed a number of telomere experts on my YouTube channel here, and first I want to clear up a few things, and this is just because I want to try and be as scientific as possible, especially when it comes to telomeres. The telomeres don't really get damaged. What happens is when the cells replicate, there's something called the end telomere replication problem, which means that the RNA has to copy the DNA to make the new cell, right? And the RNA can't copy the DNA properly, so you lose a little bit of telomere length on each replication. So what happens is my son is in the other room right now. He's about 3 weeks old. When he was conceived about 11 months ago, the sperm and the egg came together to make him, and those sperm and egg cells had about 15,000 base pairs of telomere length. And that's out of about, 100 million base pairs that are in your DNA, right, and your chromosomes. The telomeres are on the tips of those. And all the replications that happen during the gestation period of about 10 months when the baby is in the womb, because the cells are replicating so much, by the time the baby's born, they have about 10,000 base pairs of telomere length. So it goes from 15,000 at conception to 10,000 at birth. So then your cells, don't replicate as much as you're getting older. They slow down. But every time your cells replicate, you lose about 50 to 100 base pairs of telomere length. Now, I think what's happening with you is when your telomeres were measured, that's actually your white blood cells that they're measuring the telomere length with. All of the cells in your body have telomere length. So your brain cells, your eye cells, your liver, kidney, all that stuff. None of those things were measured for you. It was your white blood cells. And as you've already mentioned specifically, I think your immune system has become incredibly strong. And that's why I think your white blood cells are, showed at 42 years of age, a 28-year biological age of telomere length. But I hate to burst your bubble. I had my telomeres measured in 2013 as well too. I was 28 years old. Life Length was the company I used. They're headquartered in Madrid, Spain. Maria Blasco's company, Dr. Maria Blasco, they showed a telomere length of 21 years biological age. But that doesn't mean that I was 21 years old biologically. It just means that the blood telomeres, and the white blood cells were that age. I could have liver cells that were in a lot of trouble because I was drinking a lot of alcohol in my 20s, that could have shorter telomeres. And really the main problem is if you have short telomeres in one area, like liver, you can get liver cancer and then you're like screwed, So does that kind of make sense?
Yes, a little bit. And yes, yeah, I can see that it's, I understand they're not saying I was a 28-year-old, but, and that was a while ago. I'd love to have it, done again.
Steve, do you recall what company they used to measure your telomeres 11 years ago when you were 42?
I really don't. Yeah, no, it was.
Because there's a lot of different telomere companies out there and they don't all do it right, in my opinion. So if you want to get this done again, I recommend two companies, Life Length in Madrid, Spain. You don't have to go there. You can just ship your blood. You can get your blood drawn anywhere. You could do it. probably, and you
Uh-huh.
can send it to Lifelink. And there's another company in Silicon Valley near me. They've rebranded, they're called Teloyears now, Teloyears. I think those two companies have the most accurate telomere length testing, but again, it's measuring your white blood cell telomere length. So, and Steve, before I forget, since we're talking about telomeres, telomerase is the enzyme that actually prints out new telomeres. That's crazy. And these two things are two of the three telomerase activators pills that I think that you could take. This is Isagenix, Isogenesis. Isagenix is the name of the company. Isogenesis is the name of the product. And this is Dr. Bill Andrews. I've interviewed him. This is his aging care capsules. This is TAM 818. It's telomerase activating molecule. I don't know if you probably can't see that with the camera.
I can see.
Yeah, it's a telomerase activating molecule, aging care capsules. Defy Time is the name of the company. These are insanely expensive. It's $800 for 90 pills. These are much more affordable.
Wow.
But this is the strongest telomerase activator on the planet, known to Dr. Bill Andrews, who's measuring these in his lab in Reno, Nevada. I've interviewed him. But they're still very, very, very weak. It's maybe like 14% activation. And we want 100% activation like we have in our germ cells, our reproductive cells. That's most likely why when my baby was born 3 weeks ago, he came out at biological age 0 rather than biological age 34, how old my wife and I are. Haven't you always wondered, like, how do we do this miracle all the time where we're a certain age, but we reproduce and our children are young? I've always wondered that, and I think I know at least what the main thing is there, and that's the telomerase enzyme. It's a microbial printer that's in your reproductive cells, and it prints out new telomeres. So, like I said, every time your cells replicate, the telomeres shorten. But if we can actually print out more telomeres using the telomerase enzyme, then you can add those telomeres length on. And another thing you said, the telomeres don't actually protect the chromosome like a lot of people think, because they give the analogy of like the shoelace cap and the plastic at the end, which is a pretty good analogy. But that plastic end of the cap protects it. And that's not really what telomeres do. What they do is they're a genetic expression that tell the genes to turn on or off. So as we get older, the telomeres shorten, and it tells the genes basically to be old. And if you can lengthen the telomeres, what we found in mice studies, and I've interviewed Liz Parrish, who did the first ever telomerase enzyme activator gene therapy. It's telling her genes to be young again. And we'll see as time ticks on. She did it 4 years ago, and she's 49 years old right now. We'll see how it works as more people do this. So I apologize.
Yes,
I want to interview you. I talked quite a bit, but I wanted to kind of share some of that information because I think you'd find it fascinating.
Yeah, no, it is. It's really fascinating. And I'm aware of Liz's work, and I know you interviewed Aubrey de Grey as well. And, I'm glad there's people out there and I know Liz, self-experimented on herself. I'm into the idea of that anyone should be able to do anything to their body. If you want to experiment on your body, I really wish the pharmaceutical industry, stepped up and allowed, humans to be used rather than all these animals. It just, I don't know, that's another subject altogether. But one of the other things about snake venom and my experiences with it is, I think, maybe like 10 years ago, I really started upping my game, and I was taking more and more. And I was having, just having the most incredible swelling on my arms. I was injecting all over my body, on my legs, everything. You just get this incredible swelling, like insane swelling. People would look at my arms and it looked like you have a broken arm, And I actually looked back on all that and I was like, okay, but all that inflammation, all that swelling, I think, again, had some kind of beneficial. I think I've read that, there's a lot of antihistamines. Everyone's frightened of swelling and, all this stuff. So antihistamines are always taking it down. And perhaps that's detrimental to the human body. And perhaps all the swelling that I had going on my body was beneficial in some manner.
I certainly think it would. And there's something called cupping, where you cup, and, I've never had it done personally, but a lot of sports practitioners do it. And a lot of people who've done it, swear by it and say that there's benefits of it. And I think that those are similar type, inflammatory responses that's helping with healing. So, it's just fascinating things there. But I want to say a few things that I probably should have said more at the beginning of the interview, Steve. I have show notes that I will put in the interview here. So if you guys are following along, watching here, go to the description below the YouTube video and you'll see links to a lot of the things that we're talking about. So one individual who Steve mentioned in his story about how we found out about or got interested in the snake venom was Bill Haast, who died at, I think, 100 and a half years old in 2011. And he was injecting himself with snake venom, multiple times, and had been bitten by multiple snakes. He was running the snake zoo down in Miami. And, when I saw and here's another thing I want to mention we haven't talked about yet. I saw you originally, Steve, in your 2013 Vice documentary, which now just hit 9 million views. Check the link below. Guys, definitely watch that documentary. It's incredible. There's other great content of Steve by Vice and other things. Steve has his own YouTube channel, which I'll link here as well, which has a lot of great information if you want to learn more. We're only going to be able to talk about so much in this interview. So I'll have links to all those other things. I'll let Steve plug any other links he wants to talk about as well too. But, essentially this is very, very fascinating subject. And we want to make sure that we're not encouraging people to do this because it's highly, highly dangerous. But, Steve, share with the audience a little bit more about some of the things that I just mentioned with maybe Bill Haast and the Vice documentary and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Haast, what an incredible man. And he also claimed that he had never been sick a day in his life, which, I was just like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And he was quite healthy. He made it to 100.5. And the Vice documentary that I did, in 2013 was it? That was an interesting one. I mean, I look back on that and kind of wish I had done it in a different manner, perhaps. It was a crazy time in my life, and to invite Vice in, I skateboarded down to their offices and I told them, if you film what I do, it's gonna work for you. And it was one of their most successful films. But the whole thing, I'll tell you a funny story about it. It was wild. Like on the first day of shooting, they had to have, for legal reasons, for insurance reasons, they had to have paramedics like at the shoot for like 3-4 days. I had an ambulance following me around, and I got into. I was right about to start milking a cobra, and it was like 9 o'clock in the morning, and the ambulance, the paramedics, they were just suddenly stepped in and they said, no, we're not going to let this happen. This can't happen. This is too dangerous. And it turned into a massive argument. I said, hey, you're just here to observe. You're not here to make any comments. And we got into this, it looked like it wasn't even going to be made. And I was so wound up that I finally convinced them. I said, I do this all the time. You're here to observe, nothing else. And I was so wound up that I ended up like shaking. When you get in a kind of fight, you're shaking. Yeah. So that whole documentary, like I'm literally shaking like this, and a little bit camera shy anyway, inviting people into my house to watch what I do. But everybody always comments, oh, look at he's shaking. The snake venom is bad for you. You're giving yourself Parkinson's, but it wasn't the case. It was just the fact that I was really nervous and under pressure from a room full of people, and I'm milking, deadly snakes and injecting. So I don't have any damage, to my system.
Definitely, Steve, and I think I think after that documentary, you also read some of the YouTube comments in a little 5 or 6 minute video, and somebody was saying that you were shaking. And
Yes.
you're like, see, I'm not shaking now. And you were shaking a little bit, but it's like when you're on camera, if you're nervous a little bit, you can be shaking a little bit, and all those people in your home. And, you know, I think a lot
Yeah.
of times, don't let the worst YouTube comments bring you down, is all I'll say. And hopefully you've realized that at this point. But I found that documentary to be incredibly informal and entertaining. Just the authenticity of it, how they captured you, it just seems so real and raw, and it's phenomenal. And that's probably why it has 9 million views.
Yeah. And I didn't want to appear cocky. I didn't want to say, this is what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing is going to be good. And I didn't say anything like that. I was quite self-deprecating and being very honest that, like, I didn't have a medical background. I didn't understand exactly what it was doing to my body. But yeah, I was being quite self-deprecating. But I kind of, to be honest with you, the reason I did it, I almost used the media to get a calling card, because after that, I started getting a lot of people getting in touch with me from all over the world. I mean, a lot of them were nutcases, but the best one turned out to be, you know, a group of scientists from the University of Copenhagen that were very interested in doing a project. And they flew over to my house in London, and the idea that they had was exactly in line with what I wanted to do. So they basically wanted to study my blood and basically look for antibodies within my blood that I had created against all the various snake venoms I'd been using. And their idea was to farm my antibodies and to recreate them and to design a new anti-venom that is made from human blood for the very first time. Because, as you know, the anti-venoms that have been being used for over 100 years now have been made from injecting horses, or sometimes sheep, or even camels, but mainly horses. They inject them with small amounts of snake venom, just like how I've been doing. And they build up their antibodies. And after, I think, about 3 to 6 months, they extract their blood, their serum, and they make. So if you were to be bitten by a venomous snake, you are technically being, your life saved by horse's blood. But there's a real problem with using horse's blood. It's very expensive, and it's also very dangerous, because there are people that you can go into anaphylactic shock immediately after being administered that antivenom that's made from equestrian blood. So the idea of using human antibodies is much safer and hopefully going to be more cost effective. Snake venom is a massive problem. The World Health Organization had, like in 2017, listed it as one of the most neglected tropical diseases. Like, over 100,000 people a year are currently dying from snake bites. And that's not including maybe the 500 to 1 million people that are permanently disfigured from the effects of the snake venom, which are grueling. I mean, a lot of the hemotoxic snakes, a lot of the vipers, they just destroy your blood cells. They just melt your flesh off. It's extreme suffering. Right now, there's some little kid in Africa that's picked up a ball and been bitten, and it is extreme suffering. I cannot tell you what a snake. I've been bitten 3 times in my life, and it's just an excruciating pain. And not only is it painful, but it's psychologically, like, it's scary. You don't know what's going on. It's complete fear. So I really think it's a neglected issue, and I think science really needs to catch up and to take care of this, this problem, because I don't think that many people need to die from it. And like I said, the suffering, the loss of limbs, it's just terrible.
Well, thank you, Steve, for stepping up from a leadership standpoint and, doing what you can to help here. I know it's not what you set out to do when you were 21 or 22 in 1988 to, when you first started injecting the snake venom, but it's interesting how, as life progresses and things progress, where it leads you to, and you're just taking the skills and the knowledge that you have to try and be compassionate and make the world a better place with this, massive problem of 100,000 or so people dying every year from the snake bite venom. So thank you for that. Can you share a little bit more details of where the project is and where you see it going, maybe from a financial standpoint and any other aspect you can share?
Yes, absolutely. So when they got in touch, we agree. I fly to Copenhagen and we signed contracts. It actually got rejected like 3 times in the European courts because they're like, you can't do this project. You can't be injecting humans with snake venom. Because I basically had years and years of doing that and had done, press and stuff, the lawyers, I guess, came to the conclusion that it's like, okay, well, they're just observing. So I was flying to Copenhagen every 2 months for a good 4 or 5 years. And I was giving, the maximum amount of blood that I could for the project. And it was really wild for me, going back to when I was 17 and I had that feeling of something good is going to happen in the future from this. It was like, wow, this really makes sense now, this is going down the road that I wanted to go down. And it's great. I mean, I had no financial gains in it. Like, it was unethical for them to pay me, and I can't have shares in a company or anything like that. And I'm glad I was doing that because I really wasn't doing it for money. I would love to be involved to solve that major problem with anti-venom, and also to relieve those poor horses. I mean, horses really, get credit for saving thousands and thousands and thousands of lives because they have. And, I think it's time that they're put out to pasture, so to speak, and, modern science steps in. I think these Danish scientists realize, they've already, so also 2 years ago, I had a bone marrow operation, which I believe you've had that as well, right?
You've watched a little bit of my YouTube channel. Yeah, my wife and I went with a company called Forever Labs in March of this year, 2019, and had our bone marrow aspiration, had just our bone marrow extracted and cryogenically frozen. The last person I interviewed last month, Dr. Michael Fossel, he didn't think it was the best idea, but it's an insurance policy for my wife and I. I hope I never have to use that for any anti-aging purposes. I hope that the stem cell and other regenerative medicine, biological science progresses enough where we can use things more cheaply like exosomes and other things. And I think that we will. But yes, we did do that. So what was your experience with that, Steve?
Yeah, I was going to say, did you enjoy having that drill going into, and what was your recuperation like? And they took a lot from me. Like, I had it done, and there were a bunch in the room. They were filming it. They took out a lot. They took out as much as they could. But yeah, the recovery was. I felt like a little bit sore for like 2 to 3 months. I could feel it. Could you feel it?
So I think this was like March 5th or so that we had it done this year. My wife and I. My wife had it done first. I recorded just on my iPhone. Dr. Chad Roger did the procedure. He's very, very experienced and talented, and he was recommended by Forever Labs to do this. And fortunately enough, he was in Orinda, California, which is in the northeast area of the Bay Area. So it was only a little over an hour drive for us. And we had the amount extracted that they recommended. I don't know exactly what that was, but it was probably 2 vials that were each about this big. So it was quite a bit. And my wife did it first, and she said she didn't have much pain because she had the anesthetic, shot first, which was more painful for her. For me, I had the anesthetic as well too. However, when he put it in, it was pretty painful. And then I could actually feel it. I could feel the vibration of the bone, and I could feel some sharp pain when he actually started first pulling it out. And you can kind of see me jump if you watch that video on my YouTube channel. However, recovery time, we played in our dodgeball championship game, my wife and I, the very next day, and we won, and I was fine, and it wasn't that painful from a recovery standpoint. So maybe your doctor wasn't super experienced or messed up. I don't know. I'm not an expert.
Well, no, I think they definitely took a lot more than 2 vials of it. There was a lot. Like I saw tons of it coming out. So who knows? But anyway, I mean, they warned me that it wasn't going to be a great operation, but it was worthwhile because they've since made like a DNA, RNA library, which they call the Ludwin library. And yes, so they have been looking for, you know, the antibodies that I've made against the various venoms that I've used. And they have a list of all the venoms that I've used. I mean, it was the most amazing. I had the job on the planet. Like nobody, I know that I'm going to go to my, you know, grave just going, I had the coolest job ever on this planet. And my job was to strengthen, you know, to build up those antibodies, just like those horses were doing in those farms around the world. I was doing that, and I was my own boss. Nobody could tell me what to do, but I knew what I was doing was important. So I basically went out and I found, you know, I found the venoms from a lot of the problematic snakes around the world. I was using black mamba venom. I was using saw-scaled vipers. I was using puff adder. I was using various cobras, including the Cape cobra, which is the most toxic one. I had lots of rattlesnakes. I had fertile ants. I had snakes from all over the world in one cocktail of injections that I was doing daily for a solid 2 years. I mean, I look back on it and it was like a dream. Like I look back and I'm like, wow, that was just, I know that it was affecting me. It wasn't, I was there to build up antibodies, but there were some wild things that were happening to me that I look back on. And I've since had some doctors and herpetologists say that within some of the compounds within those venoms that I was using, they actually, there's some compounds that help the prey item of that snake, like a little bunny rabbit that's been bitten by that cobra. That rabbit, there's a compound in that venom that helps the rabbit to perhaps lose its fear and to accept the inevitable, that death is coming, and just to go into it in a calm manner. And I really felt that I had that. I lost, like I think I lost fear. I thought I was invincible. I skateboard in traffic. I was kind of known for that. Like I just play with cars instead of doing video games or anything. I would take snake venom, get on my skateboard and just skate in the roads in between cars, you know, never going on the pavement or the sidewalk, just using the roundabouts here in England and just holding on to cars. I thought I was invincible. I had no fear that anything was going to happen. And I find that interesting. I'd love to study that in the future or to really look into it. But I think I had the craziest job in the world. I felt like I was a long distance athlete, a runner, you know, that was just trying to develop these antibodies so they could be extracted and found and replicated in a synthetic manner in a lab by these Danish scientists. But it was wild. But after the bone marrow operation, they didn't need me anymore. I was done. They had everything. So as soon as that happened, I just suddenly, it was a kind of a relief. I stopped using all those venoms. I stopped using black mamba. I stopped using all these crazy ones. And because at the end of the day, you know, perhaps, I don't know, maybe I was getting too cocky with it. Maybe it would have had some detrimental, health stuff in the future. So I just kind of cleaned up my act immediately. I slowed it down. Rather than injecting every day, I was injecting every 14 days, every 21 days. And I'm currently still doing that, but I'm only using venoms that I'm personally interested in, that are like kind of like my Coca-Cola secret, as to like the ones that I most instinctually go to that I think are going to be beneficial to me. So I've really slowed down, and yeah, I'm a lot, not as, I don't have that in my life anymore. We're always asking, are you doing it? And yeah, I am, but I've really slowed down. But for that good 4-year period that I was working with the Danish, it was just so exciting, just knowing that I was potentially going to be contributing to science, and that my blood was potentially going to be used to save human lives. I mean, it's crazy. It felt good.
Heck yeah. I mean, that's incredible if you can have some, positive effects on the world and save innocent lives. What I am working on the most right now is curing human aging and all chronic diseases. And, a lot of people don't realize this. It's about 150,000 people that die every day. And the best estimates are that there's about 110,000 people that die every single day from aging or age-related diseases. And so it's about 70% or so of people who die is from this, which is an accomplishment of human civilization that we've got this far, because people didn't used to just die from old age throughout all of human civilization. They normally died at very, very young ages, relatively speaking, 20, 25, from all sorts of things before we had antibiotics. And I won't go into all the detail, but I think people understand. But what a lot of people push back on is they think, well, those people had their time, they got to live a full life and they died of aging. With this, what you're doing, these are people who could be any age, and a lot of them are probably children who are less experienced, and don't know how to look for snakes and whatever. And so I think it's very commendable and compassionate, the work that you've done. And I'll say one more thing. You said you were happy not to, be paid by University of Copenhagen for your work. I'm a free market capitalist guy, and I wish you would have got paid for that. I don't agree with their ethics. You're the one who've done all the work and the effort and have pioneered this science, and, went to Vice News, helped produce the documentary that got 9 million views, and now Copenhagen University reached out to you. So I wish you would have gotten paid something for that, because I think you deserve it. But it's okay even if you disagree. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, even the Vice documentary, they said they couldn't pay me. I didn't get paid at all for that, because the lawyers, you should see the contracts I get from people all the time. These lawyers have to write, I purposely inject snake venom, and I, blah, blah, blah. I have to sign literally my life away. Like, Vice couldn't pay me because they see it as incentive. So if they pay me and I inject snake venom and I die on their sort of time, then they're responsible. So yeah, I mean, there's not money in snake venom with me. Perhaps in the future, I don't know. I'm really interested now. I'm talking to some people in Monaco and talking about, looking into the anti-aging market and stuff. I am more interested now that the Danish are just working on this project and I'm not needed anymore. I am interested in looking at other stuff and perhaps getting involved with new people and, just studying it. I have such a thirst for it. I'm intrigued by it. And if I have been able to slow down the aging process, whether it's 5, 10 years, I don't even, whatever, if I managed to do that by using an ancient technique, I think that should be looked at. It's really frustrating. I kind of live quite a lonely life in the sense that I feel like, screaming out, like, come on, everybody, wake up, look into this, everyone's looking at their own stuff, I guess, in the anti-aging, defeating aging sort of market. But I really think that, a lot of these people that are involved in that should, get in touch with me and start looking at snakes. You look at the history of it, like we were talking earlier, it's kind of like there's a big arrow pointing in that direction. It's within these snakes.
Steve, can I tell a quick story about so I'm the one that contacted you to ask you to please come on my YouTube channel to interview you. And since we talked about money, Steve is not being paid for this. I was hoping that we could just do this to have a friendly conversation. I just want, disclaimers out there so that people know. Full disclosure. So I've seen your documentary back in 2013. I probably watched again in 2015. And then I saw that Vice was doing some new episodes earlier this year, and I watched all of those. One of them was in Appalachian area, which is Eastern Kentucky, Western West Virginia. I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, born and raised, and I went to University of Kentucky, and I had a class freshman year called Poverty in Kentucky, Ongoing Generation of Poverty. And it's about the cycle of poverty, how when you grow up in a poor home and you're taught poor beliefs about money, that you just can't get out of it. So I'm familiar with that area. And so I found that fascinating for that particular episode that you did. And I'll have it linked in the show notes so that people can watch that. And another thing that I found very interesting is I've studied the placebo effect quite a bit in humans. And it's an effect that most people don't fully understand, but it's incredibly powerful because the placebo effect in just about any type of chronic or acute condition, any type of damage your body has anywhere from about 10 to 100% effect on healing. So think about that. The placebo effect is incredibly powerful. I followed a gentleman called Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton, for many years. He's talked about this phenomenon of these very fundamentalist religious Christian people who you spent some time with, and how they use the serpents and how they'll, basically egg on the no pun intended, egg on the snakes to bite them. And when they do, sometimes they live through what should have otherwise killed them. And they say it's their religious belief that's done that. More scientifically, I believe that it's their placebo effect. I believe that their body and brain is actually creating the antibodies that they need to fight off that venom through their powerful belief that like God is protecting them, which is kind of, I'm not religious. I don't believe you are. So I think it's kind of a little ironic that that's the religious belief is protecting them. I just kind of went on a little bit of a rant there with a little story and kind of all over the place. But the final thing that I wanted to say there, Steve, is when I was interviewing Dr. Michael Fossel last month, very, very brilliant gentleman, PhD in neurobiology from Stanford, MD from Stanford. He has a company he founded in 2015 called the Telomerase Revolution. I believe he has a great shot at, helping us slow down aging dramatically if we can get more funding to his telomerase gene therapy. He said something, he was telling a story about Dr. Michael West, another anti-aging pioneer, and how he used the word snake oil. And that made me bring it up. So I brought up you in this interview, and then I'd thought about reaching out to you in the past, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to reach out to Steve because I'm going to see what can hurt. So I hit you up on Facebook and told you who I was. And I'm really appreciative that you've agreed to do this interview because what I'm trying to do is bring a voice to things that make sense to me for anti-aging. And what you're doing, even though it seems crazy to most people, it makes sense and you can't argue with the results. And one thing that Dr. Bill Andrews says, and many other aging people that I respect, is that we have all these tests to measure aging now: telomere length, DNA methylation, on and on. There's at least 150 biomarkers. It's on and on and on. What's your NAD plus levels? What's the most important thing is what does somebody look like and what do they act like? We all know about how old biologically somebody is. And personally, I'll let the viewers decide. I don't think you look or act like a normal 53-year-old. And I think you act and look much younger. And to me, that's a compliment. So my rant is over. What do you think about all that stuff I just stated?
Well, yeah, I mean, it does make sense. And there's a complete science, obviously, to self-immunization. It's not, it's not magic or anything. Anybody can technically do, what I've done or people in the past have done. You have that adaptive immune system, you build up the antibodies, and you can, build up an immunity to those venoms. But like I said, it's not just the anti-aging, it's the strengthening of the immune system. I mean, perhaps by not getting ill and not being ill, that also slows down the aging process because you're not having that stress on your body. I mean, there's in the United States, I think it's on phase 2 trials. There's a guy in University of Southern California. I think his name's Dr. Frank Marshall. I've met him. He's using copperhead venom. which is the North American pit viper, and he's found that it's inhibiting breast cancer cells and ovarian cancer cells. So it's already being used, for potential, cancer inhibitors. Snake venom is being used in stroke medicine already, in heart attack medicine. Also, there's Gila monster venom that's being used in insulin for diabetes. Every day people are injecting, using these venoms. So it's there. The science is there. It's just, I think, it's exciting. I think pharmaceutical industries are falling over themselves trying, I think there's 40 million undiscovered compounds in various venoms. It's not just snake venom, it's sea anemones and, all the things. It just needs to be studied. I hope that answered something a little bit, but yeah, I just find it so amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And
I find it amazing.
We're just having a conversation here. I think you definitely answered my question or had a good reply there. I want to say one thing from your Vice documentary. I was taking notes last night. I rewatched that and some other content in preparation for this interview. You said in the 2013 Vice documentary, quote, "Christopher Columbus didn't go looking for America. He went looking for the fountain of youth." What does everybody want? They want to live longer. That is what I'm working on my YouTube channel, and a lot of people don't know that. I've told you I've studied history quite a bit, and Sapiens is another great book there where he talks about Christopher Columbus and that adventure. And yeah, I mean, I want people to get excited. I want people to realize that we are having an explosion of anti-aging research. And I want people to get involved. So I try to do this in every interview. It's my way of saying, comment below, share this video, go to Steve's YouTube channel, watch his Vice documentary, comment, share it on your social media. Just do what you can to contribute financially, if you can. Steve, do you have any type of a PayPal set up or a cryptocurrency wallet where people can do? I see you nodding your head. I'll talk with you offline and I'll see if we can set that up in the description for you, because people who are doing this work like Steve need to be compensated financially, for this, to keep going, and if you are working a full-time job and like I was for many years and you can't be actually involved in this, then there's ways you can participate and contribute, and financial support always helps. So Steve, I'll sync up with you offline and see if you feel comfortable with, setting up a PayPal or cryptocurrency wallet for people to donate to you if they feel so inclined.
Yeah, that's amazing. Going back to that Vice documentary, and when I mentioned Columbus, I got in a lot of trouble for that. What I really meant to say was early explorers. I think it was more Ponce de Leon who was known for, he was looking for the fountain of youth. But going to the fountain of youth, I had read a book that, and they're basically saying that anthropologists had now discovered that the original elixir of life, the Holy Grail, they somehow uncovered that it wasn't necessarily the blood of Christ. It was snake venom and the blood of a mammal or it was definitely a mammal, a human or an animal that had been repeatedly bitten by snakes. And the mixture of that venom and that person's blood or that animal's blood created that elixir that gave, increased your lifespan and kept you from illness and had anti-aging properties. So, yeah, I mean, I think it was a real buzzword. I think the early explorers, everybody has been interested in living longer. It's not something to necessarily, be embarrassed about or to whatever. It's like, why not? Survival of the fittest. I love the fact that I haven't been ill. When I have people visit me and they go, "Don't come near me, I have the flu," or "I've got whatever," I'm like, I'm all over them. I almost want to get sick now. I can't even remember what it feels like to have a fever and have those chills that I had from when I was a kid and stuff. But there's, I have to say, from the experience of all the venoms that I've used for over 30 years now, that's the one strong thing I feel is it has strengthened my immune system. It feels almost unnatural how my body is now.
Interesting. Well, I'll say, I don't think you really want to get sick. I know what you mean. because it sucks. But I don't really get sick either. I haven't for many years. The only time that I get sick is when I've been partying too much, drinking too much, and I haven't really done that in years anyways. And, immune system gets lowered. So on my YouTube channel, I talk about a lot of ways that things that you can do right now to keep your immune system strong. I think it starts with sleep. Sleep is the number one thing that like most people don't understand or don't prioritize. So I prioritize sleep as the foundation of health. And then from there, you can get better benefits from your nutrition and your exercise, meditation, just thinking positively. People who are optimistic live longer. Centenarians are more optimistic. And that has to do with the placebo effect, which is a real thing. If you're thinking positively, your white blood cells, will be more healthy. Everything. Your brain can produce a neuropeptide that creates new and younger and healthier white blood cells by thinking positively. Your pituitary gland will release positive chemicals like endorphins rather than, stress hormone, out of your pituitary gland. So those are all things that you can do to stay healthy. There's many more, but for another video, maybe. Steve, I want to mention.
Yeah,
Please go ahead.
I was just going to say on keeping healthy. Obviously, people have always thought it's crazy what I do, but by injecting venom. But I have been drinking for I don't know quite a while now. I was warned by doctors not to drink alcohol if you're putting venom into your body all the time. But people are willing, drinking a poison that's alcohol, and it's devastating on the human body. That's a good way to really mess your immune system up, I would imagine, by the amount of alcohol that this planet consumes.
Yeah, I was in a fraternity in college, and before that, I was drinking some in high school. Not much, on the weekends. I didn't ever drink during the week or things. I always got good grades and got really good grades in college as well too. But on the weekends and some weeknights, I would party and drink, and into my 20s. And I was really interested in longevity back then too. So it was my one thing, and I wasn't always eating the healthiest at some points, even though I knew about organic, whole foods and eating healthy, lots of fruits and vegetables. But in the last few years, I've really changed, and I've seen the benefits in not only the way that I look, when I look back at pictures of me in my mid-20s and at other points when I was stressed out at work, working stressful sales jobs in Silicon Valley, compared to now, where I've really prioritized my health. And more than anything, looks are great, but I feel like I'm much younger, like I'm in my early 20s and late teens again. Lots of energy. I've lost weight. So I know that what I'm doing is working for me. So Steve, can you kind of share a little bit about your lifestyle? What's an average day or week like for you? Do you consider yourself to live a fairly healthy, lifestyle from what your perception of health is?
Well, yes, I'd say no. I don't. I'm not like a health nut. I, was in a touring rock band for many years, and just partying. I don't think I don't go to the gym. I don't exercise that much. But I still seem to have my health. But no, I'm not really. I've been eating meat for 5-6 years now. I don't know if that's been a help, but to answer your question, I don't think I live the healthiest lifestyle.
All right, let's go through a few things real quick. So first of all, you still skateboard, right?
Not so much in the winter, but yeah, I do. When you can here in England.
So first of all, I think skateboarding is great exercise, and I think that if you study longevity, centenarians, people live to 100 and over. They're not huge athletes. They are people who have built in a lifestyle of being active. So I think if you're living in London, you're probably walking around a lot because the city's kind of built up that way. If you're skateboarding, I think that's good exercise. And what about sleep? What's your sleep like?
Yeah, normal. I don't have healthy sleeping, but going back to the skateboarding, not only is it a physical exercise, but the way I do it, I don't do tricks, and I don't go to skateboard parks or anything. I skate with cars and buses and trucks. And there's there's actual, there's that fear and danger involved. So not only am I getting exercise, but I always feel it's keeping my mind sharp, by playing with these cars. Like you have to be, I'm just on it all the time. So I don't know, perhaps it's the ultimate exercise, skating in traffic.
I definitely think so. And I want to say something real quick that I said with Dr. Albert de Grey when I sat down with him for my interview, which, I'll have linked in the show notes. If you're doing what you're passionate about every day, which is what I'm now doing, interviewing amazing people like you and studying longevity, full-time independently, like Albert de Grey has been doing. And if you're doing what you're passionate about, Steve, which from my opinion, from what I've heard, it seems like you are, you've wanted to be a musician, you've worked on that, your entire adult life. You've wanted to be passionate and learn about snakes and the snake venom. You've been injecting yourself. Now you're becoming more famous with the Vice documentary and other social media and the internet now. And you like skateboarding, you do that, you have fun. If you're doing what you're enjoying all the time, and you're not in a constant state of stress, like so many people are, working at jobs that they hate to support a lifestyle that they don't really need to have, because of all the social pressures of society. I think that is super important. And to me, that without going into a bunch of details and wasting a bunch of time, it comes back to the placebo effect. If you are generally happy and you're optimistic and you're enjoying life, I think it's having, to get a little scientific, it's having your pituitary gland and other hormones, regulating properly for longevity, turning on those longevity genes, having those genes be expressed for longevity, and down regulating those genes that tell your cells to be old and die, basically. So that's what I basically, in a nutshell, think explains, what you're doing to look so young and act so young for a 53-year-old, in my opinion, on top of the snake venom, which I think is also having anti-aging.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Going back to anti-aging as well, I don't know if you know, but there's been, you were talking about cupping, and I thought of Gwyneth Paltrow. She got known for that. But Gwyneth Paltrow and like Tom Cruise were also known, maybe, I think it was like 15, 20 years ago. They've been using snake venom in an anti-aging cream. There's been an anti-aging cream on the market for the last 20 years. It's a Swiss pharmaceutical company called Pentapharm that made this synthetic snake venom from a temple viper, which is an Asiatic viper, and it's called Synake, S-Y, Synakes, like dash, like synthetic snake. And so snake venom has been being used in anti-aging. Celebrities have been doing that. It's quite expensive. And it's apparently proven to, work after 28 days, just on the skin, And when I learned about that, I started making my own sort of natural, sort of moisturizing sort of base, and then just adding, good whack of snake venom in, more than that they're putting in. And it's been interesting. My skin, people are always like, wow, you just don't have the wrinkles. You don't have it. And I've had a few friends, using the cream. People are always trying to knock on my door for venom these days. But it is interesting that it's already been used in cosmetics.
Yeah, definitely so. And I've seen a video of you describing that and showing the actual venom go in the moisturizer cream. So I'll try and link that video in the show notes here in this part so that people can see that video. And, I started getting really interested in anti-aging around the age of 20 to 21. And one of the reasons was, looking at people like Tom Cruise, who even back then didn't seem to be aging much, or just celebrities in general. And comedians, a lot of comedians have lived into old age too, which supports my theory, I think, on the positivity and the placebo effect type thing as well. So I just wonder, here it is, 2019, Tom Cruise is, I believe, like 56 right now. Look at Brad Pitt. These people don't seem to be aging much. And my next interview next week is set up with Roger Ver. He is a cryptocurrency investor, one of the people who popularized Bitcoin from a very early age. He's into stem cells, and I know he's had stem cells injected just into his knee, for an ACL tear. And he'll share more about that next week when I interview him. But I know that there are celebrities who have had stem cell injections, and I know that celebrities are in some ways on the cutting edge of some anti-aging things, and I've researched that quite a bit. I'll probably produce a YouTube video to just share more about that. But yeah, the creams with the snake venom in them seem to be working for old Tom Cruise, because he looks pretty damn good for his age, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Steve, I have a number of people here that I just want to reel off their name and just see any response that you want to share with. Is that you cool to do that real quick?
Yes.
Dr. Jacob Glanville. Have you heard of him before?
Rings a bell.
He's a microbiologist, and this is where it might tie in. Tim Friede.
Yes, I'm aware of Tim.
So he is, I was going to say crazy, but I don't want to use that word because everything seems crazy until you learn more about it. But he's actually getting bit by snakes quite a bit. What are your general thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, I had some run-ins with Tim many years ago. We had some disagreements. Unfortunately, I was working with Animal Planet, and we had some disagreements. I mean, I totally support what he's doing. The only thing I wonder about, I mean, letting a snake bite you is kind of a bit weird, because you could milk the snake, 5 minutes prior to doing the filming, and you're going to get less. But also snakes, a lot of people, you say those people in the Appalachian Mountains that that are getting bit, in the churches and stuff. You have something called dry bite. So a venomous snake does not always give you venom when they bite you. I think it's safe to say that perhaps they don't really want to waste that on you, because it's really to kill their prey and to start digesting their prey. So yeah, letting the snake bite you, that's not something I would do. Doesn't really make sense. You might get some bacteria from the fang popped into a vein that you don't really want to get into and stuff. So I think it just makes more sense. I think he could have done better by just then injecting it. Seeing that whole load going in might have made more sense to me. But yeah, I know they're working, on perhaps similar ideas and stuff. But I'm there's plenty of room in the playground. Anyone who's willing to self-experiment and to come up with, I'm rooting for everybody, anybody who's involved in that. I hope he goes far.
Definitely. For those that don't know, Tim Friede is trying to also create anti-venom as well through, from his blood. And I completely agree with pretty much everything you just said there, Steve. I mean, it's not as scientific as what you're doing, because you're actually, injecting it with a needle, the snake venom, after you've milked them. And you're also not training the snake to bite you, which for me, I think you're an animal activist, and I am as well too. I don't think that's a good thing, to be having a snake bite you all the time. That's like training them that it's okay, in my opinion. So that was pretty offsetting for me. But if some good can come from it by Tim's work of creating an anti-venom, I think that's great, ultimately.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brian Hanley. Unless you wanted to say anything more about Tim.
No, carry on, Brian.
Brian Hanley, he's a microbiologist and founder of Butterfly Sciences. I think he's affiliated with Tim and some of his work right now. I don't know if you knew him at all.
Yeah, kind of. He'd been in touch with me years ago. There's been quite a few people over the years. Who else?
Okay, and then the final one, Dirk Budka. He was in an interview with you, I believe, a few years ago.
Yes. Yeah, that's a little bit of a sore subject. I've lost touch with him, but yeah, I had some crazy experiences with him that you know, I won't go into, but just crazy. I mean, again, I was injecting large amounts, and I was every week going to his clinic and having blood taken out and being told that it's, you know, being shipped to Basel in Switzerland, and Bayer are interested in this project, and there were antibacterial properties to my blood. I was being told all this stuff, and then he pretty much just disappeared. And he kind of even said, "Hey, I don't need you anymore. I got what I need from you," and just disappeared. And I'll never know what was done with that. It was really crazy. There was some crazy stuff that was going in London at that time. So yeah. But the Danish that I'm working with now, there's a project that they're wanting to start next year, where they are looking into antibacterial properties within my blood that they suspected there, to try and harvest those antibodies against viruses and bacteria, and ones that are, you know, become, obviously the buzzword out there is that all these antibiotics, all these viruses and bacteria are becoming resistant. And it's going to be, you know, apparently a real problem in the future, that there aren't going to be antibiotics to, you know, treat these illnesses. So the Danish that I'm working with are looking into using the library they already have of me. And I'm really excited by that, because that would be a big one. I mean, it's going to be awesome, you know, to be involved with an anti-venom project, but to be involved with, you know, coming up with a new antibiotic that somehow I've contributed to. And I feel really confident in that when they start looking into that next year, because I've had crazy, just crazy things happen to me with all these snake venoms. I've had, you know, all kinds of accidents. It hasn't been easy for me. I've had, you know, I've been in intensive care once here in London, you know, where I had an overdose of snake venom. I have scars all over my body. I had all kinds of bacteria that were just, you know, eating holes in my leg and stuff, and just various accidents in my life. I've always noticed that I haven't always run to a doctor to get antibiotics or anything. I've just allowed my body to fight off these infections. And I have great confidence that if they're going to develop something from human blood or human DNA, I think, without sounding too cocky, mine is going to be a very good place to start.
Definitely. And I think that it's pretty fair to say, I mean, all ego or cockiness aside, let's just be real. I mean, you have a better chance of helping contribute here than any other person on the planet I know of. I mean, there could be remote people in the middle of Africa, Asia, somewhere who, you know, have many, many snake bites. But again, with you doing it for so long and so many different types of snakes and such in a, you know, scientific manner, even though you're not a trained scientist, you know, using the syringe and avoiding any type of, you know, problems with being bit by the snake, I think that you must have such a strong immunity to the snake venom than any other person. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that that's true. One thing I want to mention, Steve, real quick is, are you familiar with at all many beekeepers who are in their older age now, 60s, 70s, 80s or so, who've been bit by a lot of bees on their, you know, hands and arms and stuff throughout their life, their joints, and they seem to have been dramatically resistant to developing diseases of old age that most people have, at least at some stage, like at that age, osteoarthritis and osteoporosis, right? So there are so it leads in, that's a phenomenon that's well known. People can check that out. But it leads into a question I have for you, Steve. What other types of species, and there's probably thousands, but how many and what other types of species of venom or poisonous type animals are you interested in? And do you think have potential to have benefits for humans and health and anti-aging?
To be honest with you, I think every single one of them, there's got to be something in every single one of those, whether it's, I mean, bee venom is, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I'm sure I read stuff that it was, you know, there were hopes that it was killing HIV virus. Yeah, I've heard of people, older people getting these and letting them sting their hands, their knuckles, and it totally alleviates the arthritis and stuff. I mean, there's definitely a power in venom. There definitely is, you know, and it goes back to that whole, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger sort of thing, you know?
Definitely. So I just want to say, I've said this in some of my other interviews, but you know, a lot of people, the older you get, the more you kind of just feel like, oh, this is the way that it is. You know, the world is the way that it is. Nothing's going to change. Change happens slowly. But with technology speeding up right now, and I don't just mean iPhones and MacBooks, I also mean biotech racing forward dramatically, changing the way that we live and communicate as humans on this earth. You know, I do think that we have the potential to change things dramatically, the way that we live and the way that we treat each other. You know, I think that we need to become more compassionate with each other globally in general on an individual basis, but also how we treat other countries and societies in developing nations and things like that. But, you know, when it comes to just scientific progress, and specifically we're talking about anti-aging in this conversation, I personally believe that we probably know less than about 1% of what the human species will eventually know if we don't destroy each other first. And I'm trying to work on ways to make sure we don't do that. So my point here is that check out Steve's work. You know, if this conversation has, you know, in any way stimulated some type of fascination or curiosity, his work that he's doing, I think, is really, really important. And I think that it could really help. But we need people to be aware of it so that people, like real scientists, can actually do the work and invest. You know, Steve's level is he's doing the injections and he's kind of the scientific lab rat, if you will, you know, and I'm trying to make this information a little bit more aware to the anti-aging community. But then from there, neither of us are scientists. We have to have the scientists become aware of this and understand that there's real reason to invest and research this technology more. And the ultimate goal to do that is to help people be compassionate. And so what do you think about that stuff, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with what you're saying. You know, compassion would be really good. That's going back. I wanted to ask, do you know about the reptilian part of our brain?
I know a little bit about it, you know, the limbic system, and the reptilian part of our brain is the oldest part of our brain. So it's the center, you know, so the way that our brains evolved is they evolved outwards. So the more inwards you go to the middle part of your brain, that's the reptilian part. And we actually have a third eye in our, you know, it's literally used to be a third eye. In reptiles, it has a cornea, a lens, and a retina, but it's just not on the outside. So that's kind of like the spirit molecule, dimethyltryptamine. You know, your, you know, center part of your brain is more reptilian. It's more responsive, so it's like more subconscious. You can't control it. So if you're sitting there thinking, my name is Brent Nally and I'm 34 years old, that information is stored out here in your prefrontal cortex, which is what we call like consciousness. But that term consciousness is not a very subjective term. It means something different to everybody. Scientists argue over what consciousness is, and we actually do not know what consciousness is. If I'm into transhumanism as well too, there's Ray Kurzweil's books back there, and Ray Kurzweil talks a lot about, well, how will we know when a computer has passed the Turing test? And that's Alan Turing, who's kind of the father of modern computers. How will we know when a computer becomes so intelligent and says, hey, I have feelings, you know, I can be hurt too. How will you know if it's lying to you? How will you know if it's sentient or not? There is a robot right now. Her name is Sophia. Her creator is Ben Gortzel. I met him for the first time in October at RadFest, and he's agreed to be interviewed on my YouTube channel. He lives in Hong Kong, so I want to try and interview him in person so we don't run into video conferencing issues like this with the latency and stuff. But he created Sophia. Sophia, a lot of people don't know this, in 2017, Sophia got citizenship in Saudi Arabia. I mean,
yes, yes.
If you ask most people, when do you think a AI robot will be granted citizenship to the first country, most people would probably tell you, that will never happen. That's science fiction. You're crazy. And you're like, well, that happened in 2017. And the interesting thing is it happened in a country that at the time wasn't even allowing women to drive in Saudi Arabia. So it's very hard to predict the future in these ways. And so I just went on a rant. You asked me about the reptilian brain, and I ended up with Sophia. So I apologize.
Well, I hope Sophia doesn't end up in Chop Chop Square getting thrown off a building for being gay or anything. I mean, why Saudi Arabia? That's a weird one. But yeah. So where were we?
Real quick.
Yeah,
Steve,
the reptilian part of the.
Saudi Arabia is very interested in tech. Elon Musk goes there. You mean the Dubai government? I know that's not Saudi Arabia, but the Dubai government just pre-ordered a bunch of the Tesla new Cybertrucks when they come out for their police vehicles. And you know, they're a very advanced society, technologically speaking, in many ways. But this actually, I want to make this point real quick. This is actually a big passion of mine. Ray Kurzweil talks about some of these things, but Jacques Fresco is a gentleman who I interviewed back in 2011 who popularized the Venus Project, was his thing, and the resource-based economy, which I don't fully agree with, but I think his ideas are very interesting. And one thing that he talks about is that science is racing forward, but our humanity is sometimes staying stationary and sometimes going backwards. So what you have there from a cultural standpoint in Saudi Arabia, in my opinion, is they're still using their religious beliefs to say women should not be allowed to drive, which the rest of the world, for the most part, the rest of the first world at least, strongly disagrees with. But yet their science is racing forward because they have tons of money from oil. So I think that those things are scary. It shouldn't just be a one-way street with technology racing forward. We also need to improve our humanity and our compassion. And I try to reach out and interview people like yourself, who I think are an aligned there, who are not just one-sided on the technology standpoint.
Yeah, no, thanks for your time. Yeah, so going back to the reptilian part of the brain, I find that interesting that, you know, we even have that. The other really wild thing about reptiles and snakes, let's say, you know, as far as anti-aging is concerned, think about, like, you know, obviously snakes shed their skin. You can't really tell if the snake is old. They shed their skin and they're looking good. You know, they might be bigger, but you can't tell if the snake is old. Like reptiles don't really age. And I just think that's another interesting sort of point. I mean, there's a book I have right here. I don't know if you're aware of this book. You should check this out. I know this guy is a guy called Jeremy Narby, and it's called The Cosmic Serpent. Can you see that?
Yes, and I've heard you mention this book, and we'll have it linked in the show notes below. So everybody, make sure you check the description and the show notes. I'll also pin it to the top comment as well.
Okay, yeah. So The Cosmic Serpent is just an interesting book. I mean, he's an anthropologist that's kind of linking the origins of DNA to snakes, and it's kind of he you know, when he was doing ayahuasca, so it's all about ayahuasca and how, you know, the DNA strands are snakes and how snakes are related to life, etc. It's really interesting. It's really interesting. It's quite wild. It's hard to digest, but you might enjoy it.
Thank you very much for mentioning that again. I've seen that I've heard you mention it in other YouTube videos that I've seen of you, but that is very fascinating regarding the DNA and the double helix strand. I've never heard that or even thought about that. I don't think made that connection. So I'd love to hear his thoughts on that. And I'll just say, I believe that we are in an ideas economy. So I want the best ideas to win out, and I want the worst ideas to be squashed. And that's another passion of mine with doing this YouTube channel. And that's a very fascinating idea. I know a little bit about reptiles and stuff, but I wouldn't say they don't age. What I would say is that they clearly age much slower than mammals. You know, giant tortoises have shown to be over 200 years old. But the truth is, if we're trying to be as scientific as possible, it's that we really don't know. And when I say we, I mean the human species, because the scientific world has really only been around for a few hundred years. And you've probably heard of this, Steve, there's the zookeeper problem, where a lot of these animals like tortoises, reptiles, crocodiles, they outlive the zookeeper. And then who knows if the zoo kept the proper, records to show how old that, reptile actually was. So I think that we just need more time to really study these things more. It all goes back to there needs more research and development on reptiles in general, snake, other venoms. We just need people to focus on this more to gather more accurate conclusions.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Well, Steve, you've been incredibly gracious with your time. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. I hope the latency for people on the video and audio wasn't too bad. I really wanted to do this interview with you because I think it's important. I hope that I can meet you in person one day. If you're ever in California for any reason, definitely hit me up. I'll drive or fly to wherever you are to interview you in person. Next time I come to London, I'll try to give you proper notice to see if we could schedule a time to meet. I'll take you out to lunch and whatever, and you can show me your snakes and things. But I really appreciate your time. I want to encourage everybody again, to check out Steve's work, his YouTube channel. I'll have a lot of links in here to other media that Steve has participated in on YouTube. You're on Twitter. I'll have your Twitter link. Steve, what's the other best ways that the audience can get involved or get in touch with you or just follow your work?
Well, I think, if anybody out there is listening, and has some ideas, I'm definitely looking to get involved with new projects, forward-thinking projects, and just to really explore. So, I don't know what's the best way to get in touch with me. Just get in touch somehow, My email is ludwinmanagement@hotmail.com. If anyone wants to get in touch and to discuss some projects. Other than that, I'm not like a big social media sort of person. Like, I'm quite, not that I'm private. I just haven't figured out how to do it. People are always saying, oh, you should have your YouTube channel and you should be doing this and hi every day and doing, but it's just not me.
I'll tell you, Steve, in my opinion, the social media stuff, it's just a lot of work. It's how much time and energy and effort you put into it. And I don't particularly enjoy it, but I do it because I'm trying to popularize the people who I think are the most important, like, yourself and the people who I've been interviewing in anti-aging. I'm trying to popularize their work so that we can actually have these anti-aging benefits come much faster. Because I believe as long as we don't destroy ourselves, the human race, I think that these things will eventually happen. I just want to be there when they happen. I don't want this stuff to happen in 7,000 years because, we have another dark ages scientifically, because people are too busy watching cat videos or something on YouTube. I want people to get passionate about this. I want them to believe that it's reality. And the only way they can believe it is that they start to learn the things that I've learned. And I know that it's not easy. I know this stuff is complex. Like when I was talking about telomeres and telomerase being a microbial printer that prints telomeres, I understand if it's the first time you've heard that, most people's head will explode and you'll just lose them. Like, what are you talking about? But this is real science. It's very well understood. I believe that we can dramatically slow, stop, and reverse aspects of human aging and eventually maybe even all of it itself. I just want it to happen faster. So with that said, Steve, do you have maybe just a couple more minutes to share your thoughts on, you said Liz Parrish, Aubrey de Grey. Who are some other people that you follow in anti-aging and maybe share any thoughts on how you learned about them and what you know about them, if you do have a couple more minutes?
Yeah, Aubrey, he did a documentary here in the UK, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago about what he was doing, and it was just really interesting. And I'd heard about Liz, and I thought it was great, that she was doing something that hadn't been done before and taking that chance and inject, what was in her injection? What was she injecting herself with?
Yeah, so she injected what's called an AAV. It's a virus. It's a viral vector, and it sounds scary to people, but it's very safe the way they've done that. It can't replicate inside your body and go crazy. It's very safe. It's been around for decades, that type of viral vector. And what she did is she did 2 injections in September of 2015 in Bogota, Colombia, because this gene therapy that she did that is used to treat biological aging, to kind of cure aging, is not allowed in pretty much any other country. And she had to work with the government of Colombia, and she had to recruit a bunch of scientists in Colombia to do this. She had to go to Dr. Bill Andrews in Sierra Sciences at Reno, Nevada. You know, it's about a 2-hour drive from where I am here in Folsom, California. I interviewed him in his lab. I've done a tour of all of his lab, all of his polychain, you know, reactor, all these electron microscopes, all this crazy stuff that he does to measure the telomeres, to create products like this. He created the gene therapy that she ended up taking. He just created a very small amount of it. She had to take it to University of Alabama scientists to do what's called scale up. She had to scale up that and make a lot more of the liquid viral vector. But she got the two from Dr. Bill Andrews. It was the telomerase gene therapy, which when you inject that in, it activates the telomerase enzyme in, let me rephrase that. The goal of this, and she was the first human being that ever did this, the goal was to activate as many of her somatic cells, which are just her, it's basically all the cells in your body minus your reproductive cells. That's what somatic cells means. So her goal was to activate telomerase enzyme as much as possible, so 100% if possible, in as many of her somatic cells as possible. That was the goal of what she did. Do we know if she's done that or not yet? No. Will we know in maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years? We'll have a lot more understanding as we see how she ages. There's other people that have done that now through the company that she's founded called BioViva. She also had something called a myostatin inhibitor gene therapy injected at the same time, September 15th, 2015 in Bogota, Colombia. What that does, it's a follistatin. So what it does is it prevents sarcopenia, which is, you know, when people get really old, like in their 80s and 90s, they get really, really frail and thin. They lose all their muscle mass and bone density, right?
Yeah.
That is called sarcopenia. So the gene therapy that she had injected called follistatin, that prevents that. It helps keep her bones strong. And the test that she did beforehand and after, I can go into details right now if you want, but I'll just say it's looking really great. Her telomere length before has gotten much better. And again, we've already discussed this. It's just her white blood cells. It doesn't mean that she has reversed her aging, but they had her bone density measured, her muscle mass. They had her C-reactive proteins, her insulin levels. Every biomarker that they measured before and after has showed age reversal. And I'll go back to the key. I met her for the first time in person in July at her home when I interviewed her. And then I saw her almost exactly 2 months ago at RadFest in early October in Las Vegas. I was up, 2 feet from her, talking with her. And, I'm observing her skin, not because she's just a beautiful woman. I'm a happily married man, but she's this walking scientific experiment. And I can just say personally, in my opinion, it's not makeup. It's not some type of a Botox or some type of a, plastic surgery she's done. She looks really good for her age and her skin and everything. So that's basically what she's done. I can share more details, but I think it's the most exciting thing in anti-aging. The problem is it's super expensive. It's what she did should have cost about $3 million, but she worked with these scientists to lower the cost. She basically convinced them to do their work pro bono because it was so important. And the more people we get interested in this and can actually invest in this and make this happen, the price can come down dramatically. So it's not time that's the problem. It's education and level of interest in doing the work. That's what needs to be done.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, technology, the future, it's all happening. I envisage in the future, and I'd love to be part of a project where, perhaps it's a yearly or a monthly, just very small injection, that has a small amount of the right snake venoms that are going to keep people healthy, slow the aging process down, and perhaps even, inhibit cancer cell growth, an injection, so there's no breast cancer in the future, using copperhead venom, whatever it is. It's, I really feel it's out there, and we just need people to research it, to fund projects. And, I don't know what it's like. I don't know what all the regulations are like in the States. It's a shame. I kind of wish things were easier. I wish Liz didn't have to go to Colombia to do that. Why couldn't she have just done that in the United States of America? Why is everyone flying to Panama for stem cell research and stuff? Why is it not in the United States of America? It's crazy, crazy.
Steve, I completely agree. And it might be a rhetorical question. I think it kind of is, but I'll answer it literally. I had stem cells injected in me almost exactly a year ago. It was December 20th, 2018 in Nuevo Vallarta, Mexico at Dreambody Clinic. I've documented that extensively on my YouTube channel. 300 million mesenchymal stem cells, 200 million IV in there. They went straight to my lungs and my heart. They're mesenchymal stem cells. They're derived from a healthy birth of the umbilical cord from 2 to 4 days earlier at Guadalajara at Cryovita's fertility clinic. So, they ship them there. It's about a 5-hour drive to Nuevo Vallarta. So they're not frozen. They're fresh. They're new. And they're perfectly safe. And I had 22 million injected in my right ankle, 32 million injected in my right knee, and 32 million injected in my right shoulder. And then I had a lyophilized placenta, which just means freeze-dried, injected into my belly in 2 locations that helps with the nutrients to help the stem cells be more efficacious, meaning basically it helps them work better. And I did this because I had chronic musculoskeletal injuries. I sprained my ankle when I was 20 years old, a 3rd-degree ankle sprain playing basketball. And if you don't know what that means, like there's 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th-degree ankle sprains. 1st and 2nd is what most people get. They suck. They're no fun. I had lots of them playing basketball growing up, but you get over it. 3rd degree, black and blue, halfway up my shin, all the way down to my toes, on crutches for a month. And I never had the proper physical therapy. So all that scar tissue just built up over the last 10, 15 years. And guess what? It's been a year now. I need to do my 1-year stem cell update. I'm like 90 to 95% healed. On days when I don't get great sleep and don't eat healthy, I can feel some inflammation building there, but I'm much better. And I think that the IV of the stem cells that I had improved my heart and my lungs as well too. I have no data to prove that. It's just a belief on what I know about the science. But I mean, America is no longer really the land of the free and the home of the brave. It's more the land of the fee and the home of the slave. It is upsetting that the FDA, in my opinion, is not on the side of the people, that they're more tied into the pharmaceutical companies. And it has to do now with socialism, with the U.S. being tied into healthcare being socialistic. I know that's not a popular statement for most people, but the more you make the insurance companies and insurance socialistic for healthcare, the more incentivized that you have for money to not be, the primary driver of how economics works. And then the pharmaceutical companies can get tied into the FDA, and it can just go haywire. So I believe more in free markets, and that's really what more of Mexico is. There's a downside to the free market. You have to be educated. You got to know what the heck you're doing. Liz Parrish did a crazy amount of research before she did what she did. And lots of PhD scientists told her she was crazy. But as of right now, in my opinion, she's looking really smart. Time will tell. I'm just a guy who's sharing my opinion and trying to document this. Time will tell if what she did was intelligent or not.
Well, I mean, it sounds like your ankle, all those injections, it sounds really worked on your ankle, that sounds like that has worked, I mean, you're pioneering yourself by doing those injections, congratulations. I mean, it takes a certain bravery to sort of explore like that.
It was really crazy, honestly. And I'm always researching, trying to learn more, trying to keep an open mind. I love the quote, the mind's like a parachute. It only works if it's open, But one thing Michael Fossil said in my interview with him last month, where I literally laughed out loud, we're on Zoom, like a Zoom conference. He's in Michigan. And the Zoom literally came to me when he was talking because I laughed so loud, because we're on voice activation. And he said, yeah, but you want to make sure your mind's not so open that your brains fall out. And that's kind of stuck with me because, yeah, you want to keep an open mind, but yeah, you also want to make sure that you don't get too carried away with certain things. And I think that the middle way, one thing I wanted to say earlier, I studied Eastern philosophy my sophomore year in college. And that class was very interesting. So I know quite a lot about that. I sold traditional Chinese medicine in 2008, 2009. I did not know that the, oh my God, why am I drawing a blank? The circle with the yin and yang. Yes, I did not know that the yin and yang was a snake eating another snake. At least if I had heard that, I forgot it. That's super cool. All those, when you reeled off all those things, I'm gonna go back and watch this interview. There were so many cool things that you said there about snakes. It's so fascinating.
Yeah, really look into it. It's incredible. I mean, the whole feminine and masculine sort of thing is related to snakes. It's just, there's tons and tons of history that needs to be looked at. It's really wild. Sometimes I feel like I'm like Jeff Goldblum in The Fly. I've had so much venom in me, and sometimes I think it's changing me. It's done something. I mean, who knows? I mean, I really think I need to be studied a little bit more. That's why I'm really hoping to work with some new forward-thinking people and just dive into it. What has it done to my body?
Definitely. While I don't have a whole lot of viewers right now, I've only been doing this YouTube channel for about a year as far as the anti-aging stuff, but I'm really trying to build out my network. And the people who do watch my channel are pretty like highly intelligent people and a lot of scientists, like from my opinion, from what I can tell from the data I've looked into and the comments and things. So I really do hope that this interview in some way can bring some more scientists and scientifically minded people to study you, because I do think that your body does need to be studied in many ways for science. And I think it'd be incredible if we can do that in some way.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I'm worth taking a punt on. I don't think anyone has been as stupid as I have been. I really have done some, it's quite reckless what I've done. And I'd like to say, like, nobody should be messing around with snake venom and stuff. It is really dangerous. I've had lots of accidents, and I've been on my deathbed very close to it once. When I had an overdose, my tongue was numb, my face was numb. I was very calm. I was lying in bed just thinking, I'm going to die. And I was quite happy. I felt quite, calm, and it was serene and stuff. I'm glad I didn't, but I just don't want anyone to think, to go out and get snake venom and just start using it. It is obviously dangerous.
Definitely. That's a good disclaimer there. One other thing I wanted to mention real quick, since you brought up reptiles and the reptilian brain, and you are in London, David Icke, I followed his work a little bit here and there, gone down the rabbit hole on YouTube maybe 10 years ago, and I watch some of his interviews every now and then. I mean, so people who aren't familiar with David Icke, very famous footballer, commentator in Britain, maybe early 90s, and he just got fed up with the mainstream media and told all the way that he saw it. And I was a communications major in college, and I studied mass media. I took courses on mass media. So I actually have a pretty good understanding of how corrupt the mainstream media is and how it actually works more than most people do. Communications degree is in the journalism building and department. So mainstream media in the US, at least, there's about 6 companies that own everything. And in radio, it's actually even more monopolized. So David Icke is definitely accurate in those ways. I don't personally think that people are shape-shifting into reptiles like he says, but he makes some very fascinating points. And so anything you want to share about old David Icke?
David Icke, yeah, I've been aware of him. I saw his original. I saw when he went on TV. He went on TV here on a talk show host. He was a TV presenter. He was a football goalie, and he was a presenter. But he basically started saying some wild things that really ostracized him from. He was a laughing sort of stock here. But like, I think it's really interesting what he has to say. He's kind of getting close. He's been very correct on a few things that he's said. As far as shape-shifting reptiles, and the Queen, being involved in that, he basically thinks there's a reptilian bloodline on this planet that's here. To be honest with you, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think it's that crazy. I don't really want to get into it now, but through all my, closeness to venom and reptiles, I have my own theories or my own thoughts. And it really goes back to how the dinosaurs became extinct. And I think it was a very unfair fight. I mean, I think, scientists think, yeah, it was a meteor or whatever. But I think that there's more to the story. I think that this planet was spun into darkness. The way to defeat reptiles that were living on this planet, let's say if you were an extraterrestrial force and you wanted to take over this planet, but you have these massive lizards that are going to eat you, the best thing to do, because they're cold-blooded, is to take away the power of the sun. If you can do that for a couple years, whether it was through these massive volcanoes or a meteor, you take away the sun and reptiles are screwed. There's no breeding, nothing. So it's a really easy way, but I see that as an unfair fight. And I think, there's definitely something about this planet, and it used to be a reptilian planet. And I would love to meet David Icke and discuss my theories, but I think that reptilian force went underground and has had millions of years to make a comeback. And I think that comeback could be, beyond science fiction. Like I can't really get into it without sounding like David Icke himself, but something is going to happen,
No, Steve, honestly, it's a YouTube video here. We're talking, and I hope you're being honest, and I think that you are, and I'm always trying to be honest. And I think truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. And when you said underground, I take it you meant literally. You think that they've gone underground into underground bases and stuff potentially? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, in a manner, yes. And I think that there's a million of years, I think there's stuff that's going to come in. It's not so much shape shifting. I for years have always felt, it's going to be size shifting. It's going to be the ability to get very large very quickly. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not too sure. I always imagine that there's a United Nations of all the living organisms on this planet. I think that it's there, and they get together somehow through a hive mentality, whatever it is. There's communication within the species, and I think right now they're discussing human beings and obviously we are a disaster to this planet, a disaster. And I would love to be a mediator between those things and humans. I would love to mediate between the two. I think that's going to be my future.
Let me say a few things there, Steve. If there's things that Steve just mentioned that the audience might think sound super crazy, let me throw out a few facts here. Okay, so first of all, in Antarctica, it's very well documented that the United Nations has a vault of every single plant, seed, and I think there's other things too. I'm going off memory here. I've seen documentary on this. There's definitely, they want all the seeds that they can in Antarctica in a vault to be studied and stored, kind of like Noah's Ark, And I think that they're also storing plants, but I think it's seeds is the main thing, and foods and things like that. So we know that's mainstream. So it's not unreasonable to think that they would have other types of species and maybe even people, and who knows, Second of all, a lot of people don't know hierarchical structures. That's something that David Icke talks a lot about. It's called compartmentalization. I've worked at startups in Silicon Valley, but I've also worked at big corporations. My last job, I worked at Microsoft for about a year because LinkedIn was acquired by Microsoft. I was working at LinkedIn. And I worked at HP before that as well, too. I worked at Hewlett Packard selling data storage while I knew how corrupt this whole system was with the NSA and big government spying and, illegally. This is against the U.S. Constitution with the NSA and primarily, but also CIA and a lot of the other alphabet soup organizations were doing. And finally, I remember when Edward Snowden came out and whistleblowed, I was like, thank God somebody finally told this, because it was getting out of control. Somebody finally exposed this, right? So things can get completely out of control within corporations and governments, and it takes a whistleblower to sometimes get that out. So that's not that crazy. And then regarding regarding dinosaurs. I've been fascinated with dinosaurs since I was very young. I took a class. It was a famous class at University of Kentucky. You could only do it on Monday nights. It was from 6 to 9 p.m. And it was a real pain in the ass because I was in a fraternity, and we had one weekly meetings, and you were supposed to always attend the meeting. I wanted to take this class, so I did, and my fraternity brothers were upset about it, but it was such a cool class. I learned so much about dinosaurs, and there have been 5 major disasters on the planet that's recognized by geologists and mainstream science, where about 90% or more of all the species that were on the planet died off in each one of those 5 disasters. And what Steve is referring to now is that mainstream scientists, regardless of what you believe about climate change or CO2, mainstream scientists, it's very clear that it's shown that we are now in the 6th. We're in the beginning, and maybe more than the beginning, in the 6th major extinction. But this one's different because it's the first time it's ever being caused by humans due to we'll just use the word pollution, the way that we're treating Gaia, Mother Earth. And so Steve has mentioned this a number of times in this interview that, we're destroying the planet. And I really want to see us turn the other way. But you have to read a book like 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. And if in this book, what Peter Thiel talks about is that technology is really our best way out, because 0 to 1 means taking something that doesn't exist and creating something new. Because all these third world countries, these third world people, they want all the technology that we have. They want the MacBooks, they want the refrigerators, they want the stoves, they want our lifestyle. But the problem is that if they get that lifestyle too, this planet is done as far as, pollution goes. So it's a race to create new technologies that are clean technologies like solar and other things. And that's why I'm personally a Tesla investor. It's not because I think, it's because I think that this stuff is important. I'm investing in Tesla because I think we need to create these sustainable technologies, or it could get really bad. So I just went on a little rant there, but I tried to tie in things, that Steve was talking about and give a little bit more of scientific, legitimate background for people to think a little bit more about this stuff and what's really going on the planet. What's the truth?
Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk, he wants to, get to Mars and stuff. I wish I could have a meeting with him, because I'd say, hey, that's all great. Let's, go to other planets if possible. Let's strengthen the human immune system so you can, survive out in space. And just, it can be done. I'm sure we can get to a point where our bodies are just, not having the illnesses that, people were dying from, 150 years ago. They're not, it's not happening anymore. The future is bright as far as humans are concerned, living longer and being healthier,
Definitely. I believe so. And that's what I'm trying to study all the time and teach on my YouTube channel. And hopefully my next video that I can produce, you might hear my little 3-week-old baby screaming in the background. I don't know if you can hear him. He's crying right now. But so if I actually have time, the next video I want to produce, a lot of people have been asking, is what can people actually be doing right now to live the healthiest lifestyle? And you don't have to do everything every day. But the sad truth is most people don't know about sleep. They don't know what the healthiest lifestyle is. And you mentioned earlier, Steve, bacterial infections. I think this was quite a while ago in this interview, but the microbiome is a very emerging new science. And we're becoming resistant to a lot of antibiotics now mainly because of a lot of the antibiotics that's in the meat supply, which is, terrible. And in other ways too, just by actually getting the antibiotics injected. But the meat supply is the main reason that humans are becoming resistant to antibiotics. And really that's affecting your microbiome, which is a part of your immune system. And so I'm now my wife and I are eating a diet that fits our specific microbiome according to a company called Viome, Viome. And I did a YouTube video on this back in March. It's just 8 minutes explaining this, and I'll do an update soon. But I've been eating my Viome diet about 80% accurately for the last, since March, so about 9 months. And I'll just say, I think it's really cleaned up my GI tract. Without being too gross, my number twos are back to when they were when I was like a teenager. And it's one of those things where you're just getting older, and my number twos were just not as healthy as they were, but you're just like, oh, whatever. I don't know what to do about this. I guess this is just aging. Now they just come right out smooth, easy, like while I was younger. And I think it's because I've been eating my microbiome diet. But who knows? I also do a lot of other health things. Quick disclaimer, I also had chiropractic on my body, so I think that contributed to my healing too. I don't want to say it's just the stem cells. I've also been living a really healthy lifestyle this year, getting optimal sleep. And sleep. It's so important, Steve. I'll send you my sleep video. And Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker is the book review I did. It's a phenomenal book. Sleep is about 1/3 of your life. It's about 8 hours. Or if you're only sleeping 6 hours, then it's 1/4 of your life. Either way, everybody should learn more about it because it's so important. It's how your body heals. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Steve, you've been overly gracious with your time. We've actually gone over from the time that we've agreed upon. So I just want to give you an opportunity to get in any, last words, any last plugs, any last things that you want to say, the number one thing that you want the audience to take from this interview.
Well, I would say be kind to snakes. Be kind to all animals, but be kind to snakes. Don't kill snakes if you see them in your backyard, because they might end up saving you or your family in the future.
I love it. Steve, thank you so much for your time. Namaste. Infinite gratitude for you taking the time to do this. And I'm focusing on long-term thinking, long-term relationships with long-term people. So I really appreciate you taking this time. And I hope that I can meet you one day and we can do an interview that doesn't have, some of the video conferencing, audio and video latency. And again, I'm so fortunate, and I think that your work that you're doing is really important to humanity and very similar to some of the other work that I report on. Sadly, most people just don't know about this stuff and they don't appreciate it. And it will probably be people like my kid when he's grown up, and maybe even future generations, that will actually reap the benefits of your work and read about it in their history books rather than unfortunately knowing about it now. But that's just the reality.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for your time. It was very interesting to talk to you. You're the real expert on this. And yeah, I've learned a lot and I enjoyed it a lot. And I hope your listeners have too. So yes, thank you so much. And I hope to meet you too someday.
Thank you, Steve. And you have a great day and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
One mind, one love, one heart, one soul. One life, one chance, one hand.
Let's dance the sky, let's dance for a while. Heaven can wait, we're only watching the skies. Hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. Are you gonna drop the bomb or not? Let us die young or let us live forever. We don't have the power, but we never say never. Sitting in a sand pit, life is a short trip. The music's for the sad men. Can you imagine when the race is run? Turn our golden faces into the sun. Praising our leaders, we're getting in tune. The music's played by the madman. want to be forever young. Do you really want to live forever?
One life,
forever
one love,
and ever.
one soul.
Some say